growing now, different with my early years of the social entrepreneurship journey back to maybe more than 10 years ago, 1 decade ago. I think I will start my presentation. Please start from the very first page. So my journey back was started more than 1 decade ago when I founded the foundation in my hometown Garut in West Java. We are Asgardian. Orang Garut is called by Asgardian. So same with Thor and Loki. We are part of Avengers. We are Asgardian, proud Asgardian, asal Garut. It was my calling when finally I started this movement and I think transform into the foundation, because at that time I also started my startup, very early startup in Indonesia, when I had to struggle to find the investor there because I think there is no venture capital at that time. I talked to more than 30 alumni of ITB back then, and finally after having had a roadshow to more than 30 alumni, I got the investment, then I get the golden share. But I think it's quite struggling at that time because I had to learn everything from the scratch, how to market our product. Also, it's kind of futuristic product. So I think at that time Indonesia is quite less developed in the cashless payment or RFID or automation issue. So we sell our product, our startup product to school, to apartment for the private access, time attendance, absent untuk sekolah-sekolah. So it is not the different with our imagination of the segment market. So we are quite we just think how to survive at that time. Gagal project pertama 250 juta di Jakarta. So we also keliling-keliling pakai motor, pakai mobil di Jakarta, di Bandung buat masarin karena belum tahu, belum ada digital marketing zaman itu. So I think it's quite jatuh bangun gitu ya. Jadi bedah darah lah boleh dibilang. Sampai tahun pertama kita gaji cuma 1 juta, only 1 million rupiah at that time. We sleep in ruko, rumah toko. So our title is doktor, mondok di kantor. Not doctor, the real PhD. And then we kind of learn from this fact. We learn about marketing, we learn about the finance, and in the second year we successfully turns the business sheet into from red into blue, and we also can dividend, and we kind of giving back to our investor, our shareholders. So at that time, I was struggling with my identity because actually I was activist in campus. I was active. I was a founder of so many things. Business competition, the biggest in Indonesia. We had partnership with the U.S. Embassy to send the winner to the Silicon Valley to get investment, and then also we had a reality show in Metro TV for 10 episodes. So it is quite big at that time, and also. Founder of a movement how in ITB the students can contribute directly to the community based on their study, such as civil engineering. We help Simbades Sipil Bangun Desa, infrastructure in desa, farmasi pedesaan, electrical engineering student help with microhydro for the rural electrification. So I think it's quite what I'm here today is part of the what I made when I was in campus. So a combination between entrepreneurship and as well as social activity. So that's really made me who I am today. There must be balance between the purpose and also with businesses. That's when I recall my early years of the entrepreneur journey. So once I was running the startup. I also founded the organization named Asgar Muda Foundation in Garut. So you can see some of our activities in education. We also had microfinance, Syariah Microfinance by Tumawa Tanwil to help the pedagang pasar, pedagang keliling in 2 branches. Our clients more than 4,000 at that time. We have also local youth incubator where we help young people to develop their business, desa wisata, kulit, industri kreatif, peternakan, desa wisata yang sekarang sudah dikunjungi Jokowi dan sudah 2 juta per bulan omsetnya, kemudian akar wangi, banyak sekali yang itu akhirnya berdampak dan make positive changes, transformation in their community. So they empower basically the other local people there. So I think it's kind of good example when local people can develop the businesses and they also can transform their villages or their district into more developed district. We also Pondri Cooperative next, one of our latest initiative. I'm not really CEO now in this foundation or chairman. I am now the board, the trustee. So I'm not really doing this day to day now, but I'm just a supervisor. We're also developing the latest initiative to tackle the high maternal rate, death rate, as well as stunting, using the big data analytics when we mobilize community health workers and the village midwife to submit the data of the pregnant woman monthly in Posyandu. So we can doing the data analytics, then our system with the help of unique algorithm can identify which one the high risk pregnancies, as well also the intervention sent by the doctor automatically. And we hope then this year we started to replicate this initiative to NTT, Nusa Tenggara Timur, eastern part of Indonesia, as well as NTB, with the cooperation with the governor, vice governor, dinas, kemudian sponsor juga buat pilot tahun pertama sebelum nanti diadopsi oleh pemerintah daerah. We also had a cooperation with the Atlantic Institute in Oxford, UK, and Tolaram Foundation, the owner of Indomie in Africa. So it's a joint venture with Salim. The issue is quite the same. So it's one of the latest initiative. We also work together with Dompet Duafa to replicate this system into more needed population. Next. So this is one of example social entrepreneurs we have done. Actually, with the model of the scale up, we cooperate with the government to develop more this initiative. Now I'm really focused in my social enterprise, for-profit social enterprise, PT, consultant. So we basically the community development consultant. Our client mostly CSR of the companies as well as businesses as well, from BUMN, from the family businesses, large family businesses, the largest multinational company, as well as perusahaan daerah BUMD or MNC. So we empower local people in 16 provinces up to date, and I think this January will add into 22 provinces. We aim to empower more than 1 million people in 2030 with our services. Our main services is we support the local community-based enterprise or social enterprise informal, so that they can empower and transform the social economy of the livelihood of the people there. So basically we're doing pendampingan to BUMDes, desa wisata, koperasi nelayan yang sudah ekspor ke Cina sama ke Filipina, sudah punya cold storage, sudah miliaran omsetnya, hulu sampai hilir, hilirisasinya juga, desa wisata terbaik se-ASEAN, the best community based tourism in ASEAN also, in Langgeran, South Mountain or Gunung Kidul, Yogyakarta. Lots of our success story as well. So we is different sectors and also different industries, and we aim big to empower more than 1 billion people in 2030. Next. We based in Jakarta, but we have the local facilitator everywhere in 20 province. So we are quite small team in Jakarta, but I think we have a local team in every cities, every corner of the island, of the rural areas, to work with the local people. Then I started my presentation topic here. Maybe I will take 15 minutes to talk about the landscape of the social entrepreneurship in Indonesia. So I think actually social entrepreneurship is kind of new, but I think it's already started long before, even before Indonesian independence in 30s, where Muhammadiyah uh, named Kiai Suja and Kiai Ahmad Dahlan. Kiai Suja actually who declared the amal usaha. Amal usaha is amal is social, usaha is business, social businesses. If you open the website of Muhammadiyah, you can see in the top corner, top right corner, you can find amal usaha. So amal usaha basically is the oldest form of the social enterprise in Indonesia, where Muhammadiyah with its mission to empower, to enlighten people, believe, doing also services with hospital, healthcare, with the university, with the schools. Basically, it's also contribute to the sustainability of Muhammadiyah. Of course, Muhammadiyah is quite a large organization now, the second largest organization, Muslim organization. But I think what kind of interesting is their social businesses as well. So it's already before, I think actually India quite popular with the land reform, and of course UK as well. So I think our founding father already think about that. If you want to sustain the change, you have to create the businesses. So I think that's simple. Next. The first chapter is I want to talk about the problem speed context. So in Indonesia, it's quite interesting. We are kind of laboratorium for the social innovation. Lots of issue, lots of sector included here. I was active writer for Kompas, for the Kompas class. So it's kind of the most reputable newspaper here in Indonesia. I was quite active for more than three years. Contributed the article for the social entrepreneurship column. So I'm making witness that all of the problem here in Indonesia, we have solution from the agricultural, from the forestry, from the poverty, from kemacetan, traffic, environment, etc. For the marginality community, we have, I think, great social innovation. But I think Indonesia is quite kind of lack of research and also how to model their social innovation. So I think the world's kind of acknowledge Indonesia is under the radar because, but I think Indonesia is kind of fantastic. Lots of opportunity because lots of the problem. So I'm witnessing that I'm also doing research for my latest book, the solution generation. I think is fabulous, fantastic. All the problems here, we have the answer. So actually, basically, it's quite simple. If you want to solve the adaptive problems, I think you can also refer to the social entrepreneurship way to solve this problem. Next. So my takeaway here is don't be afraid. Hey, you, all of you, don't be afraid if you found the problem. The problem is the opportunity. So if you kind of now have a big problem, starting from the simple kind of issue, doing the pilot or minimum viable product or the validation, then you can start replicate it to more than 1,000 population or even million. So it's kind of opportunity now for also the millennials, the younger generation of Indonesia, because I think everything now here is the opportunity is quite open, different than my generation, because I think the ecosystem is not less developed than now. Now you can have opportunity, the knowledge, everything through the webinar, to everything, networking as well as funding. The funding is quite maybe is quite easy, is simple now, it's easy now. We have clients everywhere, we have the sponsor, the partner in abroad, in UK, in US, everything. They are starving for the social innovation. So I think if you can have the innovation, social innovation, I think it is not really hard to find the funding. Next. And Faden, tahan dulu. Sebelumnya yang business model spectrum. So this is the kind of business model spectrum based on the in United Kingdom. So it's quite simple, and I think it's same with Indonesia. we have the traditional business. I think they now also turns into more socially responsible businesses doing CSR or CSV, corporate share value. They want to their supply chain also create value or CSV. That's our client basically. And also traditional charity, if you have community or foundation, maybe you're you're collecting the donasi, tapi mungkin tidak sustain sehingga nanti mikir gimana kalau mau sustain itu caranya gimana gitu. Di sisi lain perusahaan private juga dia mau sosial, going sosial, sehingga kita bisa menemukan di pertengahan ini gitu pendanaannya bagaimana. Yang kayak kita mungkin sebagian persen juga sudah self sustaining di yayasan gitu kan, sudah dari bisnis model, ngegaji karyawan dan juga ngegaji inisiatif operasional kita sudah dari bisnis model kita, tapi sebagian juga mungkin itu masih ada kita juga sponsor atau donatur, sehingga itu di tengah-tengah sebelah kiri sistemnya. But our for profit social enterprise consultant is really on the right side because it's traditional businesses. We charge our clients with good money. So we're kind of doing good. Meanwhile, we also receive the good, great number of money. And I think I am also part of the Impact Investment Beauty Company. I'm the minor shareholder there. We also had a portfolio in the housing, the traditional housing, and then we use our dividend 50% for the scholarship. We fund the mahasiswa berprestasi seluruh Indonesia di rumah kepemimpinan. So PT Lentera Mitra Strategis. So we also doing the innovative business model. 50% of the dividend, more than ratusan juta rupiah tiap tahun kita gunakan buat beasiswa. Jadi ini adalah bisnis model spektrum. Kalau teman-teman nanti mau mulai dari sosial, silakan. Kalau teman-teman sudah punya bisnis mau berdampak, silakan juga. Kita juga ngajarin tiap tahun dengan Bank Mandiri buat para peserta UMM supaya mereka dampaknya bisa kita perbesar dengan menganalisa tipologi bisnis mereka. Next. And the next chapter is, I think, about the social mission versus business model type in Indonesia. So it's kind of similar to the form of organization or kelembagaan gitu ya. Jadi sama with it's kind of same all over the world. That I think Indonesia social enterprise is divided into three models. First is embedded, when the social mission is also the businesses, where the beneficiaries is also the user. The great example about this is Danone when they team up with the Grameen Bank to create the yogurt for the poor family with also the affordable price and using the branch, the network of Grameen. So it's kind of the beneficiaries or the poor people, the target population is also the user of the businesses. So that's why we call it this kind of social enterprise embedded model. The second type is the integrated model, when the sum of the activities or some of the activities is beririsan gitu kan, cross. Maybe for example, some of the maybe the generation, if you mentioned earlier, the waste for change created by my friend Sano from ITB as well, Junior Sano, waste for change. They already make $1 billion of money because mereka ngurus gitu kan, waste responsible company for the consultant and also the waste responsible. So they have the social mission to less plastic, zero waste plastic, but I think the enterprising is lots of services. They help the corporation or the developer to have the certificate of responsible company, waste responsible company, and they're doing the lots of businesses. Maybe also the percontohan, the tourism for the sampah, etc. So I think this where when we call the social program is some of them overlap with the businesses. And the last version is separated when the business is clearly different with the social activities. For example, you can mention, I think, Dompet Duafa. Dompet Duafa have also social activities because they have to menyalurkan zakat gitu ya, Islamic charities into the muzaki, into yang membutuhkan gitu kan, yang membutuhkan zakat gitu, poor people and another yang penerima zakat gitu ya, kok saya lupa lagi. Nah, kemudian enterprise, mereka juga punya social enterprise. They have social enterprise from kurban, for the traveling, many activities. So it's really different, the social business, the social mission, and the business. That's when we call the separated model. So it's quite kind of familiar with also in the world. And now we can see lots of a hybrid model as well, when a younger generation of social entrepreneur in Indonesia is quite fancy to create startup, and they also create the social campaign, maybe using startup, using the funding, some of them to the social activities. Some of them membangun yayasan, or some of them already team up with the communities. So I think we call it separated the social enterprise. Next. And this is the social enterprise typology in Indonesia. So I think we can classify all of the social enterprise in Indonesia into this 9 typology. Typology is the form. Starting from the first typology is entrepreneur support model. So this is a consultant like us, or a microfinance, when the social enterprise di ujung gitu ya, di kiri, they help the target population through consulting, through pendampingan, through maybe funding, small seed of funding, so they can successfully enter the market. Maybe our microfinance is classified into this model, so we help the poor micro entrepreneurs with the funding, as well as tabungan, as well as pendidikan, education, capacity building, so they can successfully going into market. So that's the first typology of the social enterprise in Indonesia. Is very koperasi simpan pinjam, Ulmal Watanwil, consultant, food, or this kind of familiar. And in this each typology, I don't have time. It has their own key success success kriteria. Their bagaimana pembagian hasilnya, how they clearly operate is kind of special. And the second one is the market intermediary model. So it's the opposite of the previous model, when the social enterprise is in the middle. I think. They act as a broker or the intermediator. Basically, this is the fair trade model, when the social enterprise get the supply from the farmers or from the artisans, and they can have added value, recipe, technology, branding, packaging, the story, so they can successfully sell the product into market. So it's kind of different with the previous model, and different key success and also how they operate is kind of unique. So I don't want to discuss lots of things about this each of typology, because we don't have any time. We have to have a special session about this. Employment model, when they operate in marginal community, basically for this disabled community or other marginalized community, they basically don't have any skills. So the social enterprise teaching them how to make a living, make a product. So they also market this product. And yeah, lots of model, but I think the cooperative model as well, kooperasi, when the founder is more social, less commercial, they join with the beneficiaries to create the cooperatives. So this is also different. Lots of cooperatives in Indonesia. Maybe the one of the most famous cooperative is Telapak Foundation, when they kind of successfully turns the illegal logger into sustainable logger, when they can have certificate of the Forest Stewardship Council. The first is Asia Pacific, and they can basically conserve the forest environment, when they also receive the more profit. So I think this is one of the good example of the cooperatives. In Indonesia, cooperative is everywhere. We have the 100,000 more cooperatives, but I think only maybe 25% are basically active until now. And the most famous one is the market linkage model in the below in the left corner. This is kind of same with Gojek. So the platform, the social enterprise only connect the target population into market using their platform. Petani dengan pasar, kemudian tukang ojek dengan katakanlah pasar, kemudian pendanaan dengan ini. Kalau modelnya benar-benar social enterprise itu is quite debatable. But I think this is quite kind of huge growing now in Indonesia because this is using digital technology, mainstreaming now. So I think it's kind of growing, this typology as well. And the last is the hybrid model, when one company can create the foundation to do the more social activities, or social enterprise can create the business entity, business commercial entity to fund their project on, or to fund their yayasan, or to fund their social mission. So I think this is the several typology. I don't have any time to discuss this further, but I think it is the typology of the social enterprise in Indonesia. Next. I think I have two PPT anymore, two slide. And this is the legal form. This is my friend, I think Surya, maybe next would you share the regulatory framework of social enterprise in Nepal? Because now in Indonesia, we don't have any form of the legal form of the social enterprise. So there is no regulatory framework of the social enterprise in Indonesia. You have to choose either to create a business entity like the limited companies, CV, or cooperatives, more socialized commercial, or social entities like a foundation or perkumpulan Indonesia, asosiasi, or informal, not registered to the government or to the law. Kube, paguyuban, community, desa wisata, Pokdarwis yang mungkin belum jadi BUMDes. So this is kind of informal form of the social enterprise. So if you consider desa wisata, kemudian koperasi petani, KWT, dan lain sebagainya as the social enterprise, is kind of huge population of social enterprise in Indonesia. But if you only categorize social enterprise as the social enterprise, ya yang terkenal ya mungkin sedikit. Jadi there is no legal framework. This is our homework as well. If you refer to UK, they have the community interest company framework. So it's kind of more kind of huge advantage to them because they can receive grant. Meanwhile, they can also receive the tax keringanan pajak, tax deduction as a social enterprise, and they can also ikut tender. They can also have the project from the government, the social enterprise in UK. So it's kind of special. Or in Thailand or in South Korea. My friend also in the Asia Foundation, Surya, I went to my third visit to South Korea when I was talking in front of the government of Goyang City in Seoul. We also talked to UN Habitat and also to our friend, the second batch of the Asia Foundation, Jong Tai. He's doing well in the social enterprise effort there in South Korea. And I think I was green with envy because in South Korea, the social enterprise is quite growing and have priority. The government is focusing their effort, economic effort. One of the initiative is the social enterprise. So I think this is kind of challenging in Indonesia to have the legal form of the social enterprise. Next. And this is about the funding, the spectrum of the funding. Here in Indonesia, we have this type of funding. We have philanthropy. This is, I think, huge. You can have the sponsorship. You can have the philanthropy from the, I think, Islamic organization or donation. So it's kind of popular here still. Or you can get the funding from Kitabisa, from the campaign in the site. I think less commercial investment. I think social enterprise in Indonesia is not really into the commercial investment. Maybe some of them, the largest, the big social enterprise like Muhammadiyah, maybe one of them dealing with the bank. But I don't mention any maybe in each project in a project case, not as an organization. And also Saung Angklung Ujo, I think maybe some of the project also for the development also using the commercial investment. But I think now if you consider lots of startup who have the social mission, they kind of also now access some of the commercial investment. So I think it's very rare in Indonesia, the commercial investment to social enterprise now, because I think it's challenging and there is no regulatory, as I mentioned before, about this kind of funding. And the impact investment is kind of now growing in Indonesia. I know some of the impact investment from US, from the Europe, now in Indonesia, like Acumen, like some of the other impact investment is kind of from India as well, Aviskar from yeah, I think lots of organization now, I think making good work now. They have the portfolio investment, including Angin to social enterprise in Indonesia. And is basically the type is quite flexible. They are really focusing to the impact report, not really in the return, but for the social return. So I think it's kind of more suit to the social enterprise in Indonesia, the impact investment. So we have the majority philanthropic and impact investment, and I think very rare some of them already accessing the commercial investment. You can elaborate this type of the funding using the slide I ya ditayangkan di sini. Next. Yes, you can have slide, Mbak Sri. You can ask to panitia to send to your email to your inbox. This is the last slide. Is about the future of the social enterprise. My last slide. So this is the trend of the future social enterprise in Indonesia. We've been witnessing now the digital mainstreaming, as I mentioned before, the growing ecosystem. I mean the universities who teach SOSEN, or maybe have the ecosystem now with Kampus Merdeka. We also involved in Kampus Merdeka in one of the city, one of the campus. I also frequently teach in UGM for the social enterprise activities. Universitas Goris Mustaqim, plesetannya UGM itu. Jadi UGM ini sudah sering saya datang ke sana, jadi kita plesetan jadi Universitas Goris Mustaqim ya, bukan Gajah Mada. And the rise of impact investment as well, regulatory legal framework, maybe I think in upcoming next year, maybe if Dr. Gamal will be the next minister, I believe we have the regulatory legal framework of SOSEN, and more robust and sophisticated impact investment as well, impact measurement as we're doing now as part of the service as well, STROI and other type of measurement, social progress index we're doing our client, and the social stock exchange. Who knows, there will be social stock exchange for the social enterprise in the future when the valuation is not really about the money, also for the impact. Next. I think this is the kind of also the opportunity for the social enterprise, because now the world is kind of more adaptive. When the problem is not really clear, like coronavirus, we don't have any full knowledge about the COVID now. As now we are moving to the solution, also there is no clear solution, different with the technical challenges. When the problem is quite clear, the solution is quite clear, and the locus of work is in the expert, maybe doctor, maybe the police, maybe the authority, government is kind of clear. But in adaptive world, the solution is not really clear, masih ambiar, meraba-raba gitu kan. And also we don't know yet, but I think the locus is in the stakeholders. So I think this is also the opportunity for the social enterprise, because our approach is really involving people to work together to address the future or the most pressing issue now and in the future in the world. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Kang Goris Mustaqim atas materinya yang sangat luar biasa. Sangat menginspirasi sekali tentunya. Umur 28 tahun tapi sudah berprestasi ya.
Ya, 28 tahun beberapa tahun yang lalu lah.
8 tahun plus ya, Mas, ya?
8 tahun pas masih belum punya anak.
Oh, gitu. Oke. Banyak sekali project-project social entrepreneurship yang menyentuh masyarakat tentunya ya. Tadi ada bidang wisata dan ekonomi ya, Mas Warim ya. Oke, Sobat Impact, selanjutnya kita akan mendengar langsung ya tentang cerita sukses dari Mr. Surya Karki dalam mendirikan sekolah ya, puluhan sekolah didirikan hingga sampai saat ini. Dan tentunya cerita ini nanti akan menjadi inspirasi yang luar biasa untuk kita semuanya. Langsung, Mbak Murni aman teknisnya nih?
Mbak Murni sudah tidak murni lagi.
Sudah tidak murni lagi? It's okay if that can help Miss Murni. Masih udah aman.
United World Schools is a charity that's been around for about 10 years now. And we've got a really simple mission: to teach the unreached, to provide education to children, the world's poorest children, living in countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, and Nepal.
I've been working for United World Schools Nepal for past 4 years. I founded it in Nepal. It's like a baby for me. I've been very passionate about education because I'm a product of education myself. Having lived and been raised by a single mother in poverty, in food insecurity, I've come to this particular day in this particular situation with access to different opportunities because I had access to a good quality education. When I was finishing my undergraduate in the United States, I was looking for ways to at least help my country, Nepal, rather than stay back abroad and make a living for myself working for a private enterprise. And that is when I came across United World Schools in UK, and I proposed them to work in Nepal.
I work as an education officer. Since I joined UWS, I had that wish I could help other children to get better education and quality of education like I got from somebody's help.
कुराहरू नयाँ नयाँ ज्ञानहरू विद्यार्थीलाई सिकाउन पाएकोमा खुसी लागेको छ र विद्यार्थीहरूबाट पनि आफूले केही कुराहरू सिक्न पाएको छ।
काम गरेर म यहाँ आएको 15 महिना भयो। सुरुमा मैले टिचिङ कहीँ गरेको पनि थिइनँ, एक्कासी यहीँ आयो। यहाँ आएपछि मलाई टाढा भए पनि एकदम अब यो स्कुल बनेदेखि एकदम खुसी भयो। मलाई उता जान मन लागेन। म यहाँ एकदम रमाइराखेको छु। सबैलाई यहाँ एकदम राम्रोसँग चिनिसकेँ। मलाई एक त जाने मन अझै पनि लागेको छैन। एकदम रमाइलो छ, सबैमा घोलमेल एकदम राम्रो भएको छ।
Jadi Sobat Impact, saat kecil, Mr. Surya Kartini terbiasa berjalan kaki selama 2,5 jam
children want
sekolah.
access to good quality education, to read, write, and count, and to eventually build their future. We work in these areas. We definitely work in areas where we are needed the most.
Education opens doors. The village of Hile have a very different future. Not only have we built them a school, we've built them a well and a toilet. And that will be the first well and toilet in the entire village. School means that kids get married later, they live longer, and they access different opportunities. And we can put a kid through school for less than £1 a week.
It's low cost, it's only £8,000 to run the school for the year. And that £8,000 includes things like teacher training, monitoring and evaluation to understand which children are attending and continue that kind of attendance and to assure that education is of the best quality.
I'm living my dream. That's what I could possibly say. Working with United World Schools Nepal, and specifically in rural areas, looking at stories, understanding them, listening to them, and living them has been a dream for me.
Nah, jadi itu video dari perjalanan Mr. Surya. Jadi for your information aja nih, Sobat Impact, saat kecil Mr. Surya Kartini terbiasa berjalan kurang lebih 2,5 jam untuk ke sekolah. Kemudian beliau melanjutkan kuliah di Venezuela dan setelah lulus kuliah, beliau membuat wirausaha sosial bernama United World School (UWS) di Nepal, yakni memberikan pendidikan yang baik untuk anak-anak di Nepal. Nah, kemudian wirausaha sosial ini telah berkembang hingga menjadi 34 sekolah dan telah mendidik lebih dari 5.200 murid. Dan dia percaya bahwa pendidikan merupakan tiket menuju masa depan yang cerah. Mantap. Give applause for Mr. Surya. Okay. The next session, I will invite Mr. Surya. Hello, Mr. Surya.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, can you give me screen sharing permission?
What?
Screen sharing. So, whoever is the host, can you give me screen sharing permission? Okay, done. I have it. It's good.
Okay. So, please, this time is yours, Mr. Surya.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay, I can hear your voice now.
Sounds good. And can you see my screen?
Yes, I see Mr. Surya.
Something happened. Now? Can you guys now hear me clearly? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yes, we can see, hear your voice and see your presence.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me in this wonderful online Impact Indonesia session. And it is a huge pleasure, specifically to be invited and to share some of the work that I have been doing in Nepal with my team and also with the government of Nepal. Now, somebody's mic is switched on. If you don't mind, would you mind muting your mic? I'm getting some feedback. Today, I'm actually going to take you on a journey into wonderful mountains you see. This is Madi municipality in the eastern part of Nepal. Exactly from where this photo is taken, that's where my house is, and that was where I was born. For many that are in this call, as well as that live around the world, life begins for them at 30 when they start their job, or at 25, 20 when they start their companies or any sort of career after education. For me, life began at 5. I was born in a very rural area to a single mother, and my life began at 5. At 5, I was born into this village in this particular area where we took care of our animals. I used to take care of my mother's chickens at 5, and I slowly learned to make them into hens, and I learned to take care of them. I sold them, and I made a living for me and my mother. That was me when I was 5. Now I'm 30. That is old. Actually, seems to be like I'm older than most of you here. 30 years ago, neither my mother nor
Mas Goris, bye Surya. Oke, tenang. Untuk putus kali ini bisa kita sambung kembali. Pak Arif Rahman, bangun Pak. Sambil menunggu moderator nyanyi dong. Waduh. Ini yang nyuruh saya nyanyi jak duet ini. Ayo Mas, saya lanjutkan. Bisa dimulai. Jangan lupa ya, Sobat Impact, persiapkan pertanyaannya. Nanti akan ada sesi Q&A, setiap pemateri 2 pertanyaan. Yang ngantuk, bolehlah ngopi-ngopi dulu. Mumpung Mr. Surya belum join, jadi boleh bikin kopi dulu mungkin. Pak Murni ini nggak nyediain kopi, Pak Murni.
Waduh, nggak bikin kopi.
Ini ada dari Mas Randy, jadi masuk ke saya. Apakah pernah tidak nyaman dalam hal dealing angka saham profit selama berkegiatan sosiopreneur? Saya merasa tabu jika bicara profit, terutama menyangkut saya pribadi. Tapi untuk company oke-oke saja. Masalahnya saya adalah founder dan CEO. sering bingung menyikapi pengajuan hak untuk diri saya sendiri. Saya mau deh saya sekolah lagi. Itu tambahan dari saya di akhir ya. Jadi Mas Randy, jadi harus jelas dulu Mas Randy, ini kalau memang Mas, ini kan kita mesti hidup gitu kan. Jadi bukan berarti tadi ya harus sosial terus gitu kan, harus ada juga katakanlah strategi buat juga tadi si founder maupun di pimpinannya itu bisa sustain lah boleh dibilang gitu kan, bisa growing juga bareng-bareng. Nah itu kali, jadi tergantung, boleh-boleh aja. Nah Surya udah datang lagi nih, saya pamit lagi.
Okay, welcome Mr. Surya.
Where did I end? I don't even know.
There's problem about your signal.
Yeah, where did my signal go? Where did I end?
It's okay, but I hope you don't go.
It's end up in the mountain slide, my friend Surya. So we saw the beautiful mountain, then suddenly you fly that mountain.
Okay, I was actually just talking.
Yeah.
So anyways, never mind. I will restart my presentation, and
yes,
it will end as soon as possible. Do not worry. It is not long.
So we already heard about your story, story of you about the mountain, and I think you can proceed from that. Thank you.
Okay, I will start from here. Okay. Whew, man. Can you see my screen? Yeah, can you see someone being dragged?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. This is interesting because I don't. So basically, I was born in a very rural area where life began at 5 for me and for many of my neighbors, my friends, my cousins, everyone. I'm going to. I'm hearing echo. Can someone please help me with muting participants, because I'm hearing echo from your. Okay, resume share.
Are you okay, Mr. Surya?
I am okay. I just don't have control.
Okay.
For some reason, I can't see my screen. Give me just a minute, okay? I'll make sure I come back. My computer is really acting weird. Okay, I'm pretty sure you can hear me now. You can see my screen too. I don't know where my screen went. Okay, there it is. Okay. I will make this very, very quick. I won't bore you guys. That's it. Okay, you can see my screen. So I was born in a very, very rural area. My life began at 5 by taking care of chickens with my mom, and then really, really learning to make a living for myself and my family. That was me when I was 5. I was taking care of the chickens with my mother. But 30 years ago, neither my mother nor my neighbors could have imagined that I would be presenting my life story to you guys as I was doing in 2017 when I was in London. When I was a child moving to the Gulf states or Malaysia, to find work was the farthest anyone in my family could imagine going. Many relatives, including my father and my uncles, had moved there to find work at the age of 15. But for me, things turned out to be slightly different. I was lucky to have a determined mother who dragged me to school, literally by pulling with all her strength, walking 3 hours every morning with me. The reason? She thought education could change the way we live. What she did not know was just how much education would actually transform our lives. She had heard life was different for an educated person. She was so adamant on me going to school that she tricked me into doing a scholarship test that brought students from villages like mine, from like the one you saw in the photo, in the first photo, to study in the capital of Nepal. That was in 1999, so 21 years ago. And that is when my love for education began. After coming to the capital to study, I was challenged, empowered, and I realized I could dream bigger. My life began at 5, and my love for education began when I was 8 years old. But when I returned to my village after my undergraduate studies in 2014, I had expected education to have become normal for my people and others in rural Nepal. But as I speak to you right now, 3/4 of children that enroll in grade 1 drop out before grade 8. So basically, if 100 children enroll in grade 1, only 32 make it to grade 8. So we lose 68 children before they even finish primary education. Around 1/4 of grade 4 children in rural villages like mine cannot count double digits. This is the story across Nepal, where many children have to walk 3 hours to get to the nearest school. Of these 10 children, at the present context, only 3 children would make it to grade 8. So 7 children would drop out and not have a future of opportunities. This is what I have been living with. Imagine a 5-year-old walking 3 hours through dangerous paths, back and forth from school. As you can imagine, in these situations, many parents prefer to keep their children home and working in their farms. The only dream that these parents have is for them to go to work in Malaysia or Gulf states as a cheap labor. But not everything is hopeless. This doesn't have to be the story of thousands of children across Nepal. In 2015, United World Schools Nepal was established with the sole mission of teaching children like Pasang, who went to school for the first time in 2015, in a school like this, where his life was transformed from simply wanting to live a life working as a laborer to dreaming to become a scientist. He and many other children are currently learning to read, write, count, and dream across all of our schools that were established by United World Schools Nepal. In the 50 villages where our schools are located, there is a sense of hope. Thanks to all the support from people around the world and the government of Nepal, parents can now send their children to school with bags and books instead of sending them to the farms. I'll tell you a story of Srishti. When Srishti is today 12 years old, When Srishti enrolled in UWS Gurase, she knew nothing of life beyond her daily chores at home and her family farm. She thought only boys could dream of a future away from household chores and taking care of other family members. Since enrolling in UWS Gurase last year, 3 years ago, Srishti has gone on from dreaming of becoming a teacher because she loved her own teacher so much to wanting to become a nurse or an astronaut. Can you imagine? This is a child who previously did not know that these jobs existed, and now she has the opportunity to work towards becoming something she's passionate about. No doubt her dreams will continue to change over time. But what matters is that we have given her the aspirations to dream and the tools to reach her full potential. What does United World Schools Nepal do? United World Schools Nepal primarily, first, builds good infrastructure for quality education, all earthquake and disaster resistant. We've so far built 40 schools and 2 schools are under construction. A typical school in a very faraway village, the first picture I showed to you, would look like this. Under construction, many children have, for the first time, access to good bathroom facility while they go to school. This is a typical big school that we built in the foothills of the Himalayas. I showed you the first picture, and this is exactly where I was standing. Well, does building school only give education? No. So what we do is after we build the school, we conduct education development program, where basically after the construction begins, we have our senior team, our whole team visit the village and they work with the community to build the school. After they build the school, they work with the community to prepare the school to bring all the children into the school. And for the next 5 years, our education team works to conduct education development program along with the whole government. And through all of the education development program that gets conducted, we continue to monitor, evaluate, and see if our children are improving or not. And through those continuous cycle of monitoring evaluation, we see and improve our schools so that it is ready for children, to make sure that our children have a brighter future away from poverty into prosperity. So we build a school and then we also improve the school. We build the education program within the school. In the school, what we really do is we work on early childhood development of the children. If you see here, before we started our program, many children would go to small spaces like these for education. What we did after we started our program, this is exactly what it looks like. We do teachers development program. Imagine going to these high mountains and ensuring that children have access, teachers have access to good training program. That's what we work with. We provide teachers. Furthermore, all of the school is built around the child. The child builds the school. And so therefore, with our support, able to improve their own learning, both practically as well as theoretically. Our classrooms are very colorful, very different. We engage the students in such a way that they learn, they teach, and continue to improve themselves and dream bigger. We also set up library. One of the important things that we really do is Srishti, the child that I gave you the story of, is able to have fun and is able to learn a lot and eventually be a happy child while learning in the school. Now, how do we sustain our schools? How do we make sure that the schools are running very well and they in the future funded fully? We work with the government, so we do not only do it on our own. We work with the government, and for 5 years we build the school. So after we build the school, we run the education program for 5 years in collaboration with the government, and after 5 years, the government takes over the school, not takes over to control it, but rather only to fund it, and the community is already capable of running the school on their own. So after 5 years, we really leave the place and leave it for people to find transformation for themselves. They lead their own schools and ensure that the children's future are fully secured. So in 5-year time, the school is fully sustained. What has our impact been so far? We built 40 schools and they are in running with 254 teachers that we've engaged, 28 teaching fellows placed, and 6,600 children that currently attend our schools. This is one of our schools in the foothills of the Himalayas. Today, children are happy to be attending school, dreaming of life beyond poverty and into prosperity. These children had never done art before, and today they get an opportunity to work with different teachers, both capable of teaching them and also learning them, along with them in their efforts to ensure that they dream of life beyond poverty. Our schools are very child-friendly, they are all community-centric, and they're built with the community support. And life, rather than beginning at 5, it is now school at 5. So today, children do not have to go work in the farms to help their parents. All they have to do is attend the school and learn to dream bigger than just simply staying home or going away to Gulf states or other places around the world to work as cheap labor. Today, they know why learning is fun. Today, girls have a future. Today, graduation is something that they really think of. And therefore, with education, there has been transformation that has come to all of our children in these 50 villages that I really talked to you about.